In the heart of South Florida, where the sun blazes like a relentless interrogator, a room hums with the weight of purpose. The air is thick, not just with humidity, but with the unspoken resolve of a nation battered yet unbowed. It's a press briefing, but it feels more like a war council, convened to confront an enemy that slithers through the veins of America's communities. Narcotics, the silent reaper of dreams. The room, a sterile box of fluorescent lights and folding chairs, is transformed by the gravity of what's at stake. Reporters clutch notepads like shields, their pens poised to capture a story that could ripple across a country hungry for hope. At the front, an unnamed host steps forward, voice steady as steel, cutting through the murmur of anticipation. This isn't just a briefing, it's a declaration. Ladies and gentlemen, they begin, welcome to a moment where we draw a line in the sand. Their words carry the weight of a nation watching, a nation tired of seeing its youth stolen by cartels who wield poison as power. They outline the mission to unveil the triumph of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter James, a vessel that's become a floating fortress against the tide of contraband flooding America's shores. This is about more than drugs. It's about defiance, about a people refusing to let their future be hijacked by those who profit from despair. The host introduces the warriors of this fight, each name a banner raised against the darkness. Attorney General Pam Bondi, her presence a blend of Southern grit and unrelenting justice, stands ready to wield the law like a blade. FBI Director Kash Patel, eyes sharp with the focus of a man who's seen the enemy's playbook and burned it, embodies a new era of unapologetic pursuit. Vice Admiral Nathan Moore, weathered by the sea yet unyielding, carries the Coast Guard's proud legacy on his shoulders. Lieutenant General Evan Pettis, a soldier's soldier, represents the might of Southern Command, where strategy meets sacrifice. And Captain Thomas Radzevich, commander of the cutter James, a man whose crew has stared into the abyss of the Eastern Pacific and come back victorious. As the host lays out the rules, questions must stay on the interdiction, no tangents. They're not just setting boundaries, they're framing a battlefield. The media, a mix of skeptical veterans and eager newcomers, sense the stakes. This isn't about sound bites, it's about lives. The host's voice softens briefly, acknowledging those who couldn't attend, promising a press release with images that will sear this victory into the public's mind. But the softness fades fast. We invited you here for the James offload, they say, a reminder that this is a fight against an enemy that respects no borders, no mercy. Outside, the Florida sun beats down on pallets of seized cocaine, a $500 million monument to the cartel's arrogance and their coming downfall. Inside, the room pulses with a shared conviction. This is America's stand, a refusal to let power-hungry traffickers abuse the nation's trust. The stage is set, the players assembled, and the story of the cutter James is about to unfold. A saga of courage, collaboration, and a nation clawing back its soul from the grip of injustice. The room in South Florida holds its breath as the unnamed host steps back, yielding the floor to the titans of this fight. The fluorescent lights seem to dim, as if the sheer weight of what's about to be revealed demands a spotlight of its own. Outside, the seized cocaine looms like a specter, each bale a testament to lives teetering on the edge, lives the cartels would have claimed without remorse. But here, in this cramped briefing room, the narrative shifts from despair to defiance. The leaders, each a pillar of American resolve, step forward to weave a story that's less about drugs and more about a nation refusing to kneel. First is Attorney General Pam Bondi, her voice a fiery blend of compassion and steel, cutting through the room like a lighthouse beam through fog. She paints a vivid picture. Nearly 45,000 pounds of pure, uncut cocaine, a mountain of poison worth over $500 million. intercepted before it could fracture families from Miami to Montana. "This isn't just product," she declares, her eyes sweeping the crowd, locking onto reporters who scribble furiously. "This is pain, bottled and sold by monsters." She speaks of 3,800 pounds of marijuana, a lesser villain, but no less insidious, and ties it all to the cartels, CJNG and Sinaloa, names that evoke boardrooms of blood, where profit trumps humanity. Her words carry a mother's anguish and a prosecutor's wrath, promising 11 prosecutions in Florida's Middle District, each one a shackle for those who dared poison America's heartland. "If we save one life," she says, voice trembling with conviction, "we've done our job. Today, we've saved thousands." The reporters lean forward, pens racing, as Bondi's words ripple outward, a clarion call to a nation weary of overdose obituaries. She describes the operation: drones slicing through the Pacific night, aircraft tracking ghostly vessels, ships like the cutter James standing sentinel off Peru, Ecuador, and the Galapagos. It's a high-stakes chess game played on waves, where every move saves or costs lives. Her pride in the Coast Guard crew, men and women who braved the abyss, is palpable. Her gratitude a bridge between the podium and the uniformed figures standing tall behind her. This, she insists, is justice in action, a middle finger to the cartel's arrogance, a vow that their abuse of power will not stand unchallenged. Next, FBI Director Kash Patel takes the mic, his presence a storm of intensity wrapped in purpose. South Florida is his old stomping ground, and there's a homecoming fierceness in his tone, a man who's seen the enemy's shadow and sworn to burn it away. "These aren't just traffickers," he growls, labeling the cartels foreign terrorist organizations, a designation that lands like a gavel. Every 7 minutes, an American dies from their poison. Every 7 minutes, a family breaks. His words are a gut punch, framing the crisis as a war on the nation's soul. He praises Bondi's leadership, tying it to a broader mission under a president who's made safety non-negotiable. Patel's vision is panoramic: FBI, DEA, Homeland Security, the Coast Guard, the Department of Defense, all synchronized. A juggernaut dismantling the cartel's next man up philosophy. "No more," he vows, his gaze daring the cartels to test him. The room feels smaller, as if his resolve could topple walls, and the reporters sense a shift. This isn't just a bust, it's a reckoning. Vice Admiral Nathan Moore follows, his voice weathered like the hull of the cutter James, carrying the gravitas of the sea itself. He quantifies the victory in terms that sear the mind: $510 million in drugs stopped cold, 154 lives spared from cocaine's grip, 11,000 fewer new users, $16.5 million saved in healthcare and incarceration costs. But Moore's not just about numbers. He's about meaning. "This is what the Coast Guard does," he says, pride swelling as he describes the James, a sleek predator patrolling waters the cartels thought were theirs. He widens the lens. Since February, cutters James, Stone, Weishi, and Mohawk have seized 59 metric tons of narcotics, a $1.5 billion blow to the cartel's coffers. His message to the traffickers is blunt: "We own the sea, you do not." It's a line that could be carved into the nation's bedrock, a reminder that America's borders, maritime or otherwise, are guarded by those who'd rather die than yield. Lieutenant General Evan Pettis steps up, representing Southern Command, his tone measured but fierce, like a soldier sizing up a battlefield. He speaks of duty, of defending a nation against threats that don't wear uniforms, but kill just the same. "This isn't a solo fight," he says, saluting the interagency machine. DOJ, FBI, Coast Guard, and more, working as one. He paints a cycle of justice. Prosecutions fuel intelligence. Intelligence cues action. Action yields arrests. and arrests feedback into prosecutions. It's a dance of precision, and Pettis marvels at its elegance, crediting 14 interagency partners and 21 allied nations. His gratitude to the James crew is raw, a soldier's nod to warriors who've faced the same long nights and longer odds. In his words, there's a quiet fury at the cartel's audacity, a promise that their abuse of America's trust will be their undoing. Finally, Captain Thomas Radzivich, commander of the James, speaks, his voice steady but laced with the exhaustion of a man who's sailed through hell. He recounts 56 days that felt like years, patrolling an ocean the size of the continental US, hunting 11 drug-laden vessels that darted like phantoms. Finding them was like searching for a needle in a haystack, he admits. But his crew, a team of teams, law enforcement detachments, pilots, drone operators, intelligence pros, proved unstoppable. They seized 22 metric tons of cocaine and marijuana, apprehended 34 narco-traffickers, and sent a message. You can run, but you can't hide. Radzivich's pride is a beacon, illuminating the sacrifices of those who traded family time for this mission, who cut off the cartel's fentanyl lifeline, who shielded communities from heartbreak. His crew, he says, is the best of America, and the room believes him. As Radzivich steps back, the podium empty for a moment, the weight of their words settles over the room like a tide. The reporters, faces a mix of awe and urgency, grip their notepads tighter, knowing they're witnessing a chapter in a larger war. Outside, the pallets of cocaine gleam under the sun, a trophy of this battle, but a reminder of battles yet to come. The leaders stand united, their voices echoing a single truth. The cartel's reign of terror, their abuse of power over America's future, is cracking under the weight of a nation that fights back. The briefing room, once just a space, now feels like hallowed ground, where promises are made to a country watching, waiting, hoping. The echo of Captain Radzivich's final words, "You can run, but you can't hide," lingers in the South Florida briefing room, a challenge hurled across oceans to the cartel's shadowy empires. The air crackles with tension, the kind that precedes a storm, as the host steps forward once more, their presence a quiet anchor amidst the swelling tide of anticipation. The reporters, pens poised like arrows, shift in their seats, their eyes darting between the podium and the leaders standing resolute behind it. This is no longer just a briefing. It's a crucible, where the narrative of America's fight against the narco-traffickers faces its first public test. The host raises a hand, voice firm but inviting, signaling the opening of the question and answer session. Keep it on topic, they remind, a plea wrapped in authority, as if sensing the media's hunger to pull the story in a dozen directions. The room braces itself, knowing each question could either sharpen the blade of this victory or dull its edge. A journalist, Evan, rises first, his voice cutting through the hum of whispered speculation. His question isn't just a query, it's a spark, igniting the room's fervor. "This isn't a drop in the bucket," he says, gesturing toward the imagined pallets outside, where $500 million worth of uncut cocaine sits like a taunting monument to the cartel's greed. Attorney General Pam Bondi steps forward, her face a map of resolve etched with the weight of countless case files. She seizes the moment, her voice rising like a battle cry. $500 million of pure poison, she declares, each word a hammer strike. Cocaine so raw it'd be cut with God knows what, baking soda, fentanyl, death, and spread across every corner of this country. Her hands gesture wide, as if encompassing cities from coast to heartland, where families huddle against the specter of addiction. She paints a harrowing picture. Without the cutter James, this haul could have multiplied tenfold on the streets, a plague slipping into schools, bars, and homes. "We're saving thousands of lives," she says, her gaze locking onto Evans, daring him to grasp the magnitude. "Thousands of mothers, sons, sisters, who won't bury their own, because of these brave men and women. Bondi's tribute to the Coast Guard is a hymn of gratitude, her voice softening as she turns to the crew members standing behind her, their uniforms crisp, but their eyes heavy with the sea's toll. "We talk about soldiers, cops, agents," she says. "But the Coast Guard, my God, they're out there in the dark, chasing ghosts on waves that could swallow them whole." The room feels it. The danger, the sacrifice, the quiet heroism of those who patrol the maritime frontier. She pivots to the cartels, her tone sharpening to a blade's edge. 11 defendants are locked up because of this, she says, a promise of justice that lands like thunder. "Sinaloa, CJNG, if this doesn't scream, we're coming for you." They're not listening. Her words are a gauntlet thrown down, a vow that the cartel's abuse of power, their stranglehold on America's hope, will be broken link by link. The room pulses with her intensity, but the next question veers off course. A reporter probing the murky waters of immigration policy and a recent Supreme Court ruling. Bondi's eyes narrow, not with anger, but with the focus of a woman who knows a trap when she sees one. She doesn't dodge, she redirects, her voice a controlled burn. "We're here about cartels, foreign enemies," she says, sidestepping the bait, but seizing the chance to reframe the fight. She speaks of 261 deportees, not as migrants, but as illegal aliens peddling drugs, guns, money. A calculated strike at the narrative that conflates borders with bureaucracy. They're in a prison in El Salvador, and that's 261 reasons America's safer, she asserts, her defiance a shield against those who'd muddy the mission. The host interjects, gently but firmly steering back to the interdiction, a reminder that this moment belongs to the James and its crew, not to political quicksands. Another hand rises, this time for FBI Director Kash Patel, who steps forward with the coiled energy of a man who's spent years dismantling lies. The question is sharp. How does this bust shift the cartel's calculus? Patel's response is a masterclass in controlled fury, his voice low but resonant, like a drumbeat before a charge. "The dynamic's changing," he says, gesturing to the invisible web of agencies, FBI, DEA, Coast Guard, DoD intelligence community, woven together in a way the cartels never anticipated. "This speed, this precision," he continues, "it's something Bondi and Moore say they've never seen." He leans forward, as if addressing the traffickers directly. "You're not just rattled, you're running scared." The room catches its breath, sensing the tectonic shift he describes. A government unshackled, agencies moving as one, intelligence flowing like blood through a body primed for battle. Patel's pride in the team is fierce, his refusal to claim sole credit a nod to the collective might behind him. "Every border's a front line now," he says, invoking Joint Interagency Task Force South and Southern Command. A vow that no corner of the earth is safe for those who prey on America's vulnerable. A final question crackles through the room, aimed at Bondi again, asking what message this sends to the cartels and their ilk. Sinaloa, CJNG, MS-13, the global web of organized crime. She steps to the mic, her posture a blend of exhaustion and unyielding fire, as if she's carried every overdose victim's name in her heart. "This," she says, pointing backward, though the drugs lie outside. "This is a warning." Her voice rises, each word a stone in a slingshot aimed at the cartel's hubris. "You think you can flood our ports, our seas, our streets? You're wrong." She details the arsenal, drones slicing through Pacific dusk, aircraft tracking specks on radar, ships like the James cutting through waves like avenging angels. "We're ahead of you," she says, her eyes blazing with a patriot's zeal. "We're stopping you, locking you up, or sending you back to whatever hole you crawled from." The room feels electric, her words a rallying cry for a nation that's tasted too much loss. She invokes a directive, keep America safe, and ties it to every figure on that stage, a tapestry of duty woven from sea to shore. As Bondi steps back, the reporters scribble furiously, their faces a mix of awe and urgency, knowing they've witnessed a moment where America's resolve was laid bare. The host's voice cuts through, signaling the end of questions, but the energy lingers, a current running through the room. Outside, the cocaine pallets bake under the sun, a grim trophy of this battle. But the real victory is here, in the unity, the defiance, the refusal to let the cartel's power go unchecked. The briefing room, once a sterile space, now feels like a forge, where the will of a nation is hammered into something unbreakable. The fight against the narco-traffickers, against those who'd abuse America's trust, has been shouted from this stage, and the echo will carry far beyond these walls. The South Florida briefing room hums with the aftershock of Pam Bondi's final words, her vow to the cartels, "We're ahead of you," hanging like a banner over the assembled reporters. The air feels charged, as if the collective will of the speakers has fused into something tangible, a force that could ripple from this cramped space to the farthest reaches of the nation. The fluorescent lights flicker faintly, casting long shadows behind the leaders who stand shoulder to shoulder, their faces a gallery of grit and purpose. Outside, the pallets of seized cocaine, $500 million worth of shattered cartel dreams, seem to pulse under the relentless sun, a silent witness to the battle waged and won. But here, in this moment, the story isn't over. It's crystallizing, ready to be carried beyond these walls, to a country desperate for proof that its fight matters. The host steps forward once more, their voice a steady keel in the wake of the storm. There's no flourish, no grand gesture, just the quiet authority of someone who knows the weight of what's been said. That concludes today's briefing, they say, their tone carrying both finality and an open door. The reporters, pens still scratching, look up, some with questions burning in their eyes, others already mentally drafting headlines that will scream across front pages. Coast Guard crushes cartels. America strikes back. The host anticipates the hunger for more, offering a lifeline to keep the story alive. Our Coast Guard public affairs staff will be here for any follow-up, they add, gesturing to a cluster of uniformed figures near the back, their presence a promise of transparency. And this afternoon, we'll release a full report, photos, videos, the whole story of the James's triumph. The words are practical, logistical, but they land with the weight of a sacred oath. This isn't just about paperwork or press kits. It's about etching this victory into the nation's consciousness, ensuring every American, from a diner waitress in Ohio to a teacher in California, knows what their guardians have done. The photos will show the James slicing through Pacific waves, its crew steely-eyed under starless skies. The videos will capture the moment a cartel vessel was boarded, its smuggler's arrogance crumbling under the glare of American resolve. This release, the host implies without saying, is a weapon in its own right, a salvo of truth against the cartel's lies, against the despair that festers when power goes unchecked. As the host speaks, the room begins to shift. Reporters gather their notes, some whispering to colleagues, others stealing glances at Bondi, Patel, Moore, Pettis, and Radzevich, who remain at the front, like sentinels. There's a reverence in the air, unspoken but palpable, for these men and women who've turned the tide in a war that's claimed too many. The host's final thank you very much, is less a dismissal than a baton passed, an invitation for the media to carry this story to every corner of a wounded nation. The leaders step back, their unity unbroken, their silence louder than any speech. They've said their piece, laid bare the stakes, and now it's up to the Fourth Estate to amplify the message. America is fighting back, and the cartel's reign of terror, Their abuse of a nation's trust is on borrowed time. The reporters file out, their footsteps a soft drumbeat against the linoleum, each one carrying a fragment of the saga. The cutter James, a 56-day odyssey across a merciless sea. The 34 narco-traffickers now in chains. The thousands of lives spared from cocaine's cold grip. Outside, the Florida heat wraps around them like a challenge, urging them to move faster, write sharper, shout louder. The pallets of drugs, cordoned off, but impossible to ignore, stand as a grim reminder of what's at stake. Not just product, but people, futures, the very soul of a country that refuses to break. The briefing room empties, but its echo lingers, a vow that this fight, this stand against injustice, will not fade with the closing of a door. As the last journalist slips away, the host exchanges a nod with a public affairs officer, a silent pact to keep the flame burning. The leaders too begin to disperse, their faces etched with the quiet pride of those who've done their duty, but know the war rages on. Bondi's eyes linger on the empty chairs, perhaps seeing the faces of those saved, those lost, those still fighting. Patel's jaw is set, already planning the next strike. Moore and Pettis share a glance, soldiers bound by a shared horizon. Radzevich, the captain who sailed through hell, stands tallest, his thoughts with his crew, the heartbeat of the James. This moment, this closing, isn't an end. It's a beginning, a spark that will ignite stories, policies, and resolve across a nation hungry for justice.